Anand Giardardis, that was all right. What is it? Is doing great work. Sometimes you get these people who, through a combination of their own like social capital and background, they basically like they get platforms and they get deployed in spaces, and but they're really like a skunk at the garden party in the best sense of the word, which is that he's an Aspen Institute in the best sense of the term. He's an Aspen Institute fellow. Here he is on Bloomberg, and if you follow his Twitter feed, like this is not, sort of warmed over corporate social responsibility talk. This is not like, hey, occasionally I'll make a provocative statement, but basically I'm just a Democrat. This is a guy who has something of an actual critique of capitalism and the financialization of American society. And he's doing a great job on these platforms. I played a couple of weeks ago him at some ideas festival in Chicago and saying like, hey, I do notice that one of the sponsors on stage here is still sponsoring the Saudi investment event with MBS that everybody's all freaked out about because of Khashoggi. And of course, I'm sure he would add Yemen, the other, the extraordinary crime. So here he is on Bloomberg, and he explains how every age of inequality has its own bullshit storyline that justifies that inequality. This is absolutely true and a great place to say that truth.
Balance is to a beneficial outcome for all.
I think it ends when people stop believing the BS of every age. Every age of savage, unequal distribution has its own BS. If you watch Downton Abbey, there was a set of beliefs that held the upstairs, downstairs world of feudal England together. Everybody sort of believed the story. The story of our time is that the people who have monopolized progress, who have stolen the future from the public in Britain, in the US, and elsewhere, are the change agents. Mark Zuckerberg, who's one of the great monopolists of our time and compromised American democracy, is changing the world. The financial industry, which caused the financial crisis, rebrands itself through CSR and little programs to empower some people here, empower some people there, instead of actually ever being brought to justice. Amazon,
well, are you
another
advocating
monopoly.
an anarchy? Are you advocating some form of
I'm advocating the restoration
right.
of democracy in this country and the United States and elsewhere, where you actually have public policy and leaders who reflect the aspirations of regular people.
But Anand, there's one actually number that I can't reconcile, which is life expectancy worldwide has increased to 71.5 years. Now it's different if you're a man or a woman, but aren't we having collectively a better life, an easier life?
The world is not really a world. There's a lot of variety in what's gone on. You're right at the aggregate number. The aggregate number is largely because of what's happened in India and China over the last 30, 40 years, each of which has their own very particular story of the really crappy policies they had before, which they got rid of in the last 30, 40 years, getting past their experiments and having some mix of capitalism, but also a lot of government action in both of those countries over the last few decades. My focus is many of the advanced countries of the West, which have left most of their people feeling, and often it's actually true, that the world is rigged against them, that there's no correlation between the efforts they make, the things they study, and their ability to live a good life on the other side. I know this is a business channel. I'm not a business channel guy, but I will say, even for the people watching this as
hold
investors.
on, you're not a business channel guy?
No, he
with
is.
a coat like that?
Right, exactly.
Is he, is it true? Is it a belief that they can't, or are there actually barriers?
Yes.
It is absolutely true. What is the core belief of the United States, where I come from? Social mobility, the American dream. You will end up where you end up because of what you do in your life. Do you know that belief is least true in the United States among the rich countries? The thing that Americans most think is true about them is actually least true about them.
So this is absolutely right, and I love it that, because that stat about these. First of all, I love that there is no world, there's no economy, there's no national security. These big block terms that sound so important and so official and seem to explain so much mean nothing unless you disaggregate and break them into their particulars. Then you can reconstitute them into some sort of whole. But as a generic aggregate, they don't teach you anything. And he's absolutely right about China and India. China and India basically got out of their own ways in some super basic ways. And China in particular, which is the real sort of powerful growth center there. And I am no defender of the People's Republic of China policy-wise, but they have aggressively defended and nurtured state industries and did in no way followed any type of classic World Bank IMF formula that we forced on far more vulnerable countries in Africa and Latin America. And that leads us to the second part of the clip, where Anand calls Davos, which is about to happen, what it is, which is a family reunion of world ruiners. Watch this part.
Your messages to the elites at Davos, who frankly many agree with you and would like to see a calmness or a leveling of some of these excesses. What's your counsel to the elite of Davos?
Time is running out for them to get on the right side of history. The people gathering, first of all, I believe Davos, I know you're heading over there, I believe it should be canceled this year. But the United States government, I will
I've
tell
already
you.
made reservations.
I know you have. You should still go there and just enjoy the town.
Oh, I do.
Yeah.
Skiing,
the takeout pizza is awesome.
Yeah.
Why should they cancel Davos this year?
Davos should be canceled this year because the United States government is shut down.
Okay, Trump's canceled.
Because Brexit chaos. Because of what's been happening in France with Gilets jaunes.
Is that all the more reason to have it so that
No.
elites can argue?
It's all the more
about
reason to
this?
have something different that is the anti-Davos, which is actually representatives of people around the world, people actually from communities, not the plutocratic
But
elite
Anand,
that has seceded from communities. Let me just say
but
this.
Davos is also emerging market economies going there to try and attract foreign direct investments.
Sure.
Man.
Right? So it's also countries trying to actually showcase to investors the reforms they're
Get that
doing.
money.
So it's not only about the elites, it's also about attracting capital.
Davos
which
is a
every
family
country
reunion. I'm
needs.
sorry, but Davos is a family reunion of the people who broke the world.
To take this.
Okay, the world we live in that you cover has worked for a narrow slice of people, as your dad warned you to expect. And the people, that didn't just happen. That's not just forces. We often talk about the forces of our, these aren't forces. These were outcomes designed through policy and through fighting for policies that were going
I want to bring it from this London set back to the U.S.
Oh, this is perfect. There's nothing to add to that. He's 100% right.
My only addition is I've been listening to Quinn Slobodian's
Great
The
book.
Globalists,
Great book.
Neoliberal History. There's so many amazing books that have come out about these topics in the last decade. It's pretty insane.
Well, I listened to a great interview on Doug Henwood's Behind the News last night, and the name of the guy escapes me, but he's an expert on neoliberalism. And he talked about something that I hadn't fully thought about, which is that neoliberalism isn't just about getting out of the way of the market, but it's about acknowledging that for this kind of market capitalism to continue, there needs to be a lot of government intervention actually.
That's
in
Quinn
order
Slobodian's.
to
It was probably
prop
Quinn
up
Slobodian.
the market. Yeah.
It was probably him because that's his.
That's
it's a history of how what is called in sort of propaganda discourse deregulation, opening markets is a specific type, a mechanism of a specific type of very controlling global governance that allows those rules to be written that favor corporations and the wealthy.
Yeah. He also made this point about that Steven Pinker stat that lady quoted earlier, where, dire poverty is going down, therefore we live in the best of all possible systems, which, even if that's true, and it is true, dire poverty has abated around the world for various reasons, we still have inequality. And that's one reason that I think most of us here are skeptical of a UBI, something like a UBI under current economic conditions, because even if everybody in the world, nobody is suffering from dire poverty anymore, it still enshrines this hierarchy with most people at the bottom, and that's not good enough.
Yeah, definitely. And also those numbers are starting to, that little surge that was China and India driven is starting to flatten out. So even that stat does not pack the punch that they think it packs. If you take, I know China is obviously the largest country in the world. Is India the second largest country in the world? If you take those countries of those sizes and you through some combination of like direct foreign investment and getting out of the way with certain types of just totally like, failed revolutionary experiments at times and failed policy sets, I'm not trying to rob of the achievements of China and India, but like you'd have to go out of your way to not have there be massive spikes of growth in those countries in terms like their human capital, their financial capital, their raw material resources. Like there's so much to work with there. And in the broader arc of history, it's actually like arising obviously from European colonialism through like the peak of U.S. hegemony after World War II, right? That's actually in the grand scheme of things, that's several hundred years. So India and China like re-emerging is actually like in the course of human history, things just getting back to normal. Like those are big fucking deal countries in the ways that people talk about things being a big deal in terms of, power politics and economic resources and so on, particularly China, obviously. All right, few IMs, then we got to get out of here.